Hey guys, Nick here and welcome back to GamerJoob. And welcome back to our What Needs to Be in Little Nightmares 3 Part 2. So in this video, I'll be going through a couple of my ideas and theories on what we could see in Little Nightmares 3 and also what I'd like to see as well. Also, just a spoiler warning, as we are talking about a potential number 3, so we will be spoiling number 1 and 2. But before we start today's video, if you could please consider leaving a like, commenting and subscribing, as it helps out a lot and it's greatly appreciated. Alrighty, let's get into what needs to be in a Little Nightmares 3 Part 2. So in the last video, I talked about an interesting idea for a location that could be in a possible Little Nightmares 3. This area, of course, was the suburb. A creepy abandoned neighbourhood that was home to 3 sinister characters: the gardener, the mother, and the hound. But in today's video, I wanted to concentrate on one of Little Nightmares' main characters, Six. More specifically, where does the story go after Six gains her new powers from the lady and finally leaves them all? So here's a couple of my ideas / theories of where the story could go in a possible Little Nightmares 3. So in the ending of Little Nightmares 2, Six drops Mono off the ledge and exits through the portal, leaving Mono down in the depths to eventually turn into the Thin Man. If you get the secret ending after collecting all the glitch children, then you soon realise that this was a prequel to number 1, especially after Shadow 6 points to the poster of the Maw. Now the theory of how Six got onto the Maw typically goes the way of Six escaping from the creepy nest mansion in the app game Very Little Nightmares. Then after she escapes the nest, she boards a raft and sets out to sea. Some theories suggest that Six, while at sea, was actually captured by the Ferryman, who was mentioned in the comic book. The Ferryman was a character in the Little Nightmares comic book that would actually capture and collect children and bring them to the Maw. So the popular theory of the Ferryman capturing Six and taking her to the Maw has actually kind of been disproven with the second game. So in the second game, and also the digital comic, that actually suggests that Six washed up on shore and was captured by the Hunter and then rescued by Mono. And then at the end of the second game, where Six escapes, her journey to the Maw begins when she finds that poster. So far Six's journey has taken her from the Nest Mansion, and then to the forest with the Hunter, then through the city with Mono, and then after dropping Mono, going to the Maw, and then after surviving the Maw, we're left guessing what's next. So after the second game, which is also the prequel, Six might have been captured by the Ferryman and taken to the Maw then. Or possibly she could have also snuck onto the Maw, hiding away in a passenger's luggage, which this could make a lot of sense considering that Six wakes up in a suitcase at the start of the first game. But regardless of how Six got onto the Maw, I'm more interested in actually what happens to Six when she uses her powers and leaves the Maw. So something that I'd like to see in Little Nightmares 3 is Six leaving the Maw and seeing where she goes next. My theory on how she would have left is that Six would have waited for the Ferryman to return. With her newfound power from the lady, she would actually have boarded his boat and used her power to threaten him to take her far away from the Maw. Once they reached land, Six would inevitably kill the Ferryman and set out on her new location. This would bring us to the island. This island would be filled with lots of overgrown plant life, big trees, and also deep, dark caves to explore. In the middle of this island there is a tall lighthouse, and this lighthouse is where Six is trying to reach. When Six first arrives on the island, she'd be travelling through the deep and dense jungle trying to get to the lighthouse in the centre of the island. She'd then meet the first antagonist of the game, the Islanders. The Islanders would be a tribe of lost children who have slowly lost their humanity and have started acting like wild beasts. These characters would be pretty similar to the bullies from number 2 in the way they attack and move. They'd also wear creepy looking masks and clothing made of straw and grass. They could also be armed with spears and torches and try to harm Six. Six could actually run away from these ravenous children or defend herself with a spear or a club, and what she could do is actually break their masks off their faces. When Six does break the mask off these enemies, what they could do is let out a terrible scream and also scamper back into the jungle as they'd be frightened without their masks on. Now in the Little Nightmares digital comic, we are introduced to this character, the Toddler. Now these lost island children could be based off that kind of look, but of course a little bit more ferocious and not as innocent looking as the Toddler. Also, the backstory for these Lost Island children could be pretty dark as well. It could also be pretty reminiscent of William Golding's famous novel, Lord of the Flies. After Six has dealt with this interaction with the island children, she would then find herself a wooden torch that she can use to travel through the darkness of the jungle and the caves. Speaking of caves, we now come to our next area, the Mole Den. The Mole Den would be a series of underground tunnels and caves occupied by the character that I'd like to call the Tunneler. The Tunneler would be a creepy mole-like creature who tunnels underground and makes passageways throughout the island. They would have long, sharp claws for digging and long arms for reaching. They'd also be wearing an old-fashioned mining helmet to see where they're tunneling as well. The Tunneler's long and slender body would creepily and unnaturally slither through the tunnels trying to desperately capture Six. Imagine the teacher from Little Nightmares 2, but instead of her head and neck, it's his whole body. In the digital comic, the toddler has a nightmare about multiple sharp claws digging around them and dragging them down into the tunnels below. This could be one of the attacks that the Tunneler does to Six while she's exploring the underground caves and trying to find a clear path to the lighthouse. There could also be a really tense moment where you need to run away from the Tunneler by dodging his sharp mole-like claws, but also dodging debris from a collapsing tunnel. Six could narrowly escape at the last second while the Tunneler accidentally seals himself inside the cave. After Six escapes the Tunneler, then she would find herself at the ferryman's cabin. Six would soon realise that the ferryman actually lives on this island. Whilst exploring his cabin, you'd find photos and documents of past children that he's kidnapped. You could also see lots of Easter eggs here, including a photo of the runaway kid and pictures of the workers from the mall, and even the famous eye symbol. I think that the ferryman's cabin would be really interesting to see and may have some answers to the burning questions we've had. Although the cabin would be a small section of Little Nightmares 3, it would also be a creepy little nod to the past games. Whilst exploring the cabin, Six would hear the door creep open and realise she didn't kill the ferryman after all. Six would have to hide from the ferryman as he angrily storms in and grabs his harpoon gun off the wall. After almost having a brush with death at the hands of Six's power, his stumbling Half-Life body wants to search for Six and kill her himself. While Six is trying to escape, he soon realises that she's inside the cabin with him. After a tense hide-and-seek chase sequence, we have the ferryman cornering Six. As he aims his harpoon gun at the helpless Six and pulls the trigger, you hear a loud crash. As Six looks up, she realises that the maskless island children have crashed through the window and attacked the ferryman. We soon realise that all these children are the ones that managed to escape from the ferryman. As they overpower him with their sheer numbers, he trips over and impales himself on his own harpoon. Then, after the battle, the Lost Island children stare at Six and let her continue on her journey towards the lighthouse. Alrighty guys, that's all we have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please consider leaving a like, commenting, and subscribing, as it helps out a lot and it's greatly appreciated. Also, in the comment section down below, let me know all your theories or what you'd like to see from Little Nightmares 3 as well. Alrighty guys, until the next video, I'll catch you later. Bye.